The Extremis Publishing podcast is endorsed by Heart 200, Scotland's most exciting road trip. Find out more at heart200.scot.
Hello and welcome to the Extremis Publishing podcast. I'm Tom Christie, and it's my great pleasure to be joined today by David M. Addison, travel writer and the very first author ever to publish with Extremis Publishing.
Good afternoon, Tom. It's nice to meet you again.
Now, David is no stranger to travel, it's fair to say. His writings have taken in locations all around the world, and in recent years he's become especially popular for his writings about the Scottish road trip. He's travelled the North Coast 500, the South West Coastal Route 300 and the Snow Roads Scenic Route, as well as a brand new project which we'll be unveiling later this year. In past podcast episodes, David has talked about the culture and the history of the various different regions that he's visited as a result of his writing about road trips, but today we're going to do something a little bit different, because David has agreed to come and join us and talk about the behind-the-scenes exploits that go on behind the research of his books.
Yes, these are the stories that they untold, if you like, that did not appear in the book because they're sort of more of a personal anecdote, rather than, talking about the history and the culture and so forth. And as you said, I've written 3 exploring books now and 1 in embryo. And I have 2 stories about the NC 500, 1 about the SWC 300, and another one finally on the snow roads. So if I may begin by telling you the first thing that happened to us on the NC 500, actually because of the length of the trip, we actually did it twice. And the story I'm just about to tell you happened on the second tour, because you see, by the time you'd spent so long seeing a castle or whatever, by the time you moved on to the next place, the attractions were closed. So that's why we had to come back and do it again. So for the second trip, I had borrowed my son's camper van. It's the first time I'd ever driven it. And we had got to Badby, which is between Brora and Thurso. Badby is actually a clearance village. I mean, there's not a lot to see now, just the ruins of some houses. It's perched right on the cliff, and it is so windy there, actually, that the people used to tether their livestock and their children in case they were blown off into the abyss. So anyway, there we were, going round the site, and we came back and got into the camper van. It's actually like a step up, it's quite high off the ground. So in I got, turned on the ignition, but I couldn't. The key would not turn in the lock. So neither my phone could get a signal, nor Fiona's. There was one other car in the car park, so we waited until these people came back from their visit and hoped that they could get a signal. Fortunately, they did, and I phoned my brother-in-law in Thurso. That's about 45 miles to the north. So I explained that the van had broken down. So he came and rescued us, took us back to Thurso, and then we had to contact my son's emergency cover people, for the car. And we, texted him about that. And when we got in touch with them, the rescue company wanted to know what the postcode was of, where the vehicle was. And they would not accept that it did not have a postcode. It was out in the middle of nowhere. So my brother-in-law said, there is only one company I know of, that it'll be them for sure, that will come, to sort it out. So that next morning, it was arranged that we'd meet this breakdown wagon at 9:30 at Badby. And so the driver got out and had a look and put the key in the ignition, and then he gave the steering wheel an almighty wrench, and that had freed it. And what had actually happened was that when I had got down from the car, I'd sort of held on to the steering wheel to sort of because I said it was quite a step up. So whilst I had done that, I'd actually turned the wheel unbeknownst to me, and it locked it, but it had locked it solid. I mean, it wasn't just like there was like no play in it at all, So that actually was the first misadventure we had on that. And then the same thing happened again when we were in Strathneva, and this time, however, couldn't get it the ignition to start again. But this, I knew that it was the locks, so I managed to wrestle that free, and we were off again. So that was a bit of a misadventure, and and even that was a bad thing. But there was an even worse thing to happen later on with the van. We just crossed the Kelskew Bridge, and the NC 500 takes you along the B869 to Lochinver, which is a single track road. And just before we got to Drumbeg, actually, I met a car coming down, and I was going up. And although I was bigger than him, I was the one that reversed. Now, I'm not a great reverser, I have to admit that. But I'm an even worse reverser of Richard's camper van. So I started reversing, and then I thought it maybe just enough room for him to get past, and he did. And then I tried to take off again, and it wouldn't go. Fortunately, this driver who'd made me reverse, he pulled up at the lay-by, which was just down the down the road a little bit. He was actually maybe Germans, maybe Dutch, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. Anyway, he'd seen that I couldn't pull away, so he stopped. And when I got out, I had a hairy fit, because the back near side wheel was hanging over the edge of a bank. I mean, there was quite a steep slope, down the side of the bank, trees and all that sorts of things. And so he and his mates got out and tried to push me, and then another party came along, and they were either Germans or Dutch or something like that, and it didn't make any difference. We still could not get this van to move, and they the driver of the car who'd made me do the reversing, he said, I think we'd better stop. And when I got out, to my horror, I discovered that the wheel was completely off the road. It was hanging over this sort of bank edge, and it looked very, precarious indeed. And when I got out of the driver's seat, I mean, it was quite a drop to the ground and then clamber up the bank and things. And I thought, oh my goodness, what are we going to have to do now? So he said he'd give me a lift to Kelskew or on a pool, and I would have to phone for a, rescue vehicle. But then, this is like an angel on wheels or something like that. A French Land Rover appeared, and believe it or not, he'd actually one of these like winchy things at the front of front of the radiator. So he kindly, pulled me out, but I just had visions of being stuck on a pool for I don't know how long, waiting for a rescue place, because I don't know where the nearest place would be. I mean, it could be miles and miles and miles away. So there would have been Fiona with the vehicle all that time, and she daren't sit in it in case it toppled over and, slid into the ravine. And, I've never told Richard about this. He doesn't know, except he may know now after this. But he has said for my next venture, he kindly said he would allow me to use the van again, but maybe he won't now. So my next adventure was on the SWC 300, and this is an absolutely incredible story, really. It's a coincidence of a most amazing kind. So there we were at Thrieve Gardens, waiting to go in to see the house, and I don't know where I was, but Fiona said, I think I've just seen our former GP. And I said, no, can't be, because they'd gone to the borders. Now you see, how would you define the borders, Tom?
Dumfries, Galloway.
Oh, really? Now, well, you see, to me, borders are like Peebles, Roxburgh, and,
Yeah, Selkirk, places like that, yeah.
But I don't think of the borders as being Galloway, because it's not really joined on as such, it's sticking out to the left. But actually, it did, in fact, turn out to be him, because when we assembled in front of the house for our tour, lo and behold, it was Dr. Brown. So, showed us round the house and everything, and I got in conversation with him after the tour was over, and I said, I thought you'd gone to the borders. He said, no, we're here, we live in Kirkcudbright. I said, all right. Anyway, we chatted on, and this is where the second amazing coincidence happened. One of his fellow guides is a bloke called Martin Rosendale. I said, oh, you're kidding. Because it turned out that Martin had got Fiona's job after she retired due to pregnancy. So there was his fellow guide was Fiona's successor. So when it was lunchtime, just about, so Martin had arrived for his shift. So we went into, the guide's little room kind of thing, and so we had a good old chinwag about the days at Dalbeattie, because I'd still, been at Dalbeattie, before I moved up to Falkirk, so it was just, I thought, an amazing coincidence, that these two, people I hadn't seen for years, and then that happened. So that was a sort of good experience, you might say. And my last tale is about the Snow Roads. And it starts in Blairgowrie, as you know, and spent the night in Blairgowrie. And as we were packing up, I noticed a tractor and a wagon, you know, with a huge load of straw bales. I mean, stuck out well over, you know, the side of the road. So I caught up with it after we left Blairgowrie, passed it. Then I stopped at Bridge of Cally to take some photographs and the hotel, the bridge and so forth. And ahead of me I could see that the road was closed. Now that is the route I wanted to go on. I said, oh, for heaven's sake, you know. First day, just started, can't do the route because there's roadworks. I think they were cutting down trees or something like that. And there was what the French call a déviation of the A924 to Kirkmichael. And whilst I was at Bridge of Cally, mucking about, taking these photos, this straw tractor passed me. Now, the deviation was a narrow road, and we hadn't gone very far before we came to another stop. And what had happened was that the straw tractor going up had met a bus coming down, and neither the two could pass. So we motorists, God, must have been half a mile or something of us, had to reverse right back to the bridge again, so that, you know, before there was a place where they could pass. And it actually turned out to be a bit of serendipity, you know, because that road, in actual fact, was a lot more interesting than the A93, which is the normal route. And that's, I know that because we came back, you know, that way. And there's not a lot to see on that. But actually, the best thing about it wasn't so much the scenery and things like that, but at Kirkmichael, there is a wee road, the B950 that I was telling you about. And, you know, that is where the bridge is that's on the cover. So, you know, it was really, really fortuitous because it was a much more interesting road for a start, but it was actually just so good that that turned out to be the bridge that was on the cover of the book.
Well, David, you've had some really extraordinary experiences out there on the roads, and also met with some extraordinary coincidences with some of the people that you've encountered. One of the things that jumps out at me from reading your books, of course, is not just the fact that you go into detail about the history and the culture of the places that you visit, it's also the places that you encounter when you're going slightly off the road. Are there any particular places that you feel really enhanced your appreciation of those routes just by, you know, going slightly off the beaten track?
Well, actually, you're right. I do go off piste a lot. And to be honest, the Threave Castle, well, actually, yes, Threave Castle and Threave Gardens, that's actually, you know, off the route because they're near Castle Douglas. And Castle Douglas isn't actually on the official route. The actual route sort of more, you know, hugs the coastline more. It is the southwest coastal route after all. But yes, I mean, it's only 7 miles from Dalbeattie to Threave Castle's a fascinating castle, by the way, because you go across to it in a wee rowing boat, you know, which adds interest. But the gardens of Threave are wonderful. The house is very, very interesting. So yes, I do not let myself be bound by the official route. I say, you know, it's a road. It's not a railroad, you know. So I feel at liberty to go and see anything, in the close vicinity that's of interest, certainly.
And of course, it would be remiss of me not to mention the fact that you're already hard at work on a new exploring book, which is all about another part of the country, one that's very close to your heart. And I know we don't want to give away too much about it, but are there any hints you would like to give the listeners about your latest journey?
Yes, the trouble with this latest journey is the pesky COVID, because by now I would have, had it not been for COVID, I would have been a lot further down the road, so to speak. I'm planning to do the mystery route in stages, and I would have probably done most of them, by now, had it not been for COVID. The trouble is that many of the attractions are still closed. As it happens, next week I'm going to set off and do as much as I can of the route, and I know some places are open, some places still haven't opened. I'll come back on after this trip, write up, what I've seen, and hopefully by the time I do that and we set off on our second expedition, some of these places that were shut, will have opened again. Let's hope anyway.
Well, David, it's been a real pleasure to speak to you today and to hear some of your tales of your journeys in every corner of Scotland, and more still to come. Thanks very much for having joined us.
Thanks very much, Tom. You're very welcome.
David's books, Exploring the NC 500, Exploring the SWC 300 and Exploring the Snow Roads, are all available to buy from Extremis Publishing through retailers and online booksellers worldwide. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you'll tune in again soon.
If you would like to find out more about advertising on the Extremis Publishing podcast, please visit their website at www.extremispublishing.com for details.